Felicity from GetYourRockOut, and I'm here talking to Damon from Bigelf. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Fantastic.
You just did a show?
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I have to admit, you guys were just the highlight of my weekend.
Fantastic.
It was fantastic. I'm guessing that you enjoyed the show.
It was fantastic. Yeah, it's first show in Wales and a great crowd, and you know it's good to be able to show people what we're doing, and I think it's different. I can tell when I look in people's eyes. They're kind of just, you know, they're a little in shock. I think there's a shock factor, like, whoa, what the
first song, like what
is this? Yeah, because it feels like it's something that they're going to understand, but then I think they're just like, holy, whoa.
Well, it's theatrical Prague. I mean, when does that ever happen? It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's not a bad version. It's like if theatrical Prague. It's kind of, I've always said it's kind of like if the Doors went into glam and they went into the '70s and were more, you know, because it has that theatrical, circusy. There's all kinds of elements to it. It was a good show. It was a lot of fun, and I'm thrilled when people are kind of not really sure, and I'm like a boa constrictor. I just like grab onto people and I just like don't let go of the whole show and just say you're gonna watch this. I'm gonna show you what we're doing.
Well, I think seeing the audience, there is no doubt that is exactly what happened today.
Yeah.
It's just great. And how have the rest of the UK dates been going? Have you been happy with them so far?
Yeah, we did. It was, completely different. We did Southampton, which was just kind of, sleepy coastal town. It was fun. It's always. There's all these shows are. Tonight was like a show, an actual show. We put on this performance, and people are, they're. Bigelf is, like you said, it's a theatrical Prague thing. It's a spectacle kind of band. So, and we don't even have any actual media or anything with us. So this is just show up at a show. But if we actually have some media, we really melt faces. So in Southampton, it's just a pub. So you break it down, you can't really do a show because it just seems kind of pompous and it doesn't work. So it just turns into this cool, fun live rehearsal. For people, if there's only 50, 60 people there, you can't pretend like it's a stage, because Bigelf since day one has always been, oh, you guys should be at the Forum, which is the biggest, coolest place in LA at the time, before the Staples Centers. But it's always been like, you guys should be in arenas type of thing, because it's this big sound. And when it's in a club, you have to just break it down to some laughs and some jokes and just have a good time. So it's been good. Newcastle was great. Manchester was packed. Yeah, I love England. Fantastic.
No, it must be so difficult for you to tour this project, though. I mean, just the sheer logistical difficulties of getting everything that you use from city to city and over here.
Yeah, it's not a small project, but fortunately I shipped gear over here like 15 years ago, and it's fortunately paid itself back 20 times over, so yeah.
So what do you do? Do you have different gear in each country that you're going to? And do you leave certain bits here because it's just too difficult
to... We basically, years ago when we were really, really Scandinavian based, we just did so much work up there. We just left a backline in Sweden. And we'd grab it and come and do, dates in the UK or Germany or whatnot, and then drop it again in Sweden. Then after all the Dream Theater dates we left it in South England. So, but that's an A backline. There's a B backline in Los Angeles. So, it's just on the two continents. But because it's so specific with vintage stuff, to me it makes more sense to just ship it over once or buy something here, instead of just keep on renting it, because nobody's got the gear that I have. So.
No, and there's no
the Mellotrons and the Hammond organs and the vintage. And I have more stuff down in where the hell is it? But now it's actually in Germany. But orange and vintage, all vintage stuff, vintage orange amps and whatnot. But it's kind of, it's a Wizard of Oz factor. I've been doing it since day one with the whole thing. I didn't realize at the time what I was building up, and now you can actually get out of the costume. It's like people just expect the whole thing. So it's fun. I would love to get some, people ask at every interview, what can we expect tonight? I'm like, I don't know, fucking rock and roll. It's just totally raw rock and roll. There's no show or anything. It's not like we have a wall that we're building, or there's no pigs flying out, or nobody can afford to do that. There's no pyro.
Not yet.
We're not going to bring pyro. We do some stuff on the West Coast. We have a laser So it's, incredibly Pink Floyd with all this haze and stuff. Yeah, and that just blows people's minds. But it's fun. Yeah.
And do you ever feel as though you've backed yourself into a bit of a corner with the whole costume stuff and with the whole of that? Do you ever feel, actually, I wish that I didn't have to necessarily do this on stage, or do you not feel like that?
No, the only thing that this is me. So this is just who I am. But sometimes, to be honest, it's about, do people not get it? Because it's got all these different fabrics inside it. The tapestry is so woven, it's blended, so out there. It's strange. It's a strange pattern for people because it's a little bit of Prague, it's a little bit of psychedelia, it's a little bit of Willy Wonka, it's kind of T-Rex, it's kind of satanic. I mean, there's all kinds of elements to it. There's a Jim Morrison thing, there's Beatles stuff, there's all kinds of this like soup. But to me, I think, well, every band tries to be original. Yeah. So I think we've hit on something that's unique. I never said that we were reinventing the wheel, because obviously people can pick out the Sabbath parts or the bits that sound, oh, that's so cool, it sounds like General Giant or the Beatles or something. But our formula definitely seems to me at this point now, it's got unique. And so hopefully that, but that's the way people are. People aren't, I don't think, in my opinion, I think people they're more closed-minded. Metal shows are like metal shows, and pop shows are pop shows, and rock is rock, and Southern rock is. But in the old days, like Skinner could play with ELO, and you could have like a weird opening band that was. Yeah, it's not that way anymore.
Well, I think I don't know whether I necessarily agree. I think it maybe has been, but I do think it's changing as well.
Yeah, it's changing in the last 5 years.
I think watching Devin Townsend do what he has done lately. I don't know how much of a but I saw his Casualties of Cool show in London earlier this year, and it was just all these metalheads and long hair and metal t-shirts in this chapel in Islington watching this Casualties of Cool, which was so far removed from metal. I mean, it's 50s rockabilly stuff, and I just thought, actually, people are starting to kind of accept more and more. And what I have seen myself is that actually when an artist is honest with what they're doing, and it's you can see that they're really into it and they're not doing it for a gimmick, then people are more accepting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, certainly, Bigelf is an old project. It's not a new idea. So for us to see the journey from, say, the early 90s, where people just thought we were aliens. I mean, or time warp kind of thing. Wow. Like a virtual time machine. They were like big. That was every write-up at the time that we would get when we were first coming out was, well, it's like they just stepped out of time, because at the time there wasn't a whole lot of rock music getting made that had the aesthetic. You had Lenny Kravitz, you had the Black Crowes, but you didn't have kind of rock, like hard rock, psychedelic rock, prog rock. You had Jellyfish wearing, that whole thing, but it wasn't. There was nobody doing it like now, like just in the last 3 years. There's tons of 70s bands with bell bottoms and beards and long hair, and now it's a really common thing to have aesthetic joined in. Because everyone had 70s riffs before, but now it's like, now the vocals are actually 70s again too. Like somewhere between Wolf Mother and Rival Sons and all that, like vocals got in the higher register again, because for years it was a lower register. Like somewhere with MGMT, there was this fad where vocals got kind of in a falsetto again, and it wasn't like that for a really long time. So people were like, oh, you listen to Bigelf, and it has these harmonies and the vocals are really high. And it's not metal, because metal, the newer metal didn't have the sort of standard high vocals to it. So it's really it is changing, but now it's obviously super common to have like a retro 70s rock band. It's like pretty hip again. I mean, when I open up like magazines and say like the term witch rock, I go, wow. We did that like 15 years ago. Literally, I mean, Hex came
True forerunners of the
2 or something. So it's but I'm all game to just be part of the revolution of what's going on, because it needs the music business. It needs help. Rock is just such a small piece of what's going on in music, and music is not even that big a piece of what's going on within people's lives anymore. There's so much technology. Kids are on Netflix, they're on Spotify. I mean, they're it's just like one tiny thing. When I grew up, you had AC/DC Highway to Hell, Cream Magazine, and the Long Beach Arena on September 4th, and that's all you had. It was like, that's what I lived for my whole year is to wait in line to get those tickets, and they make movies about that shit. Like that's like Detroit Rock City or something, going to see Kiss.
Oh, that's
I mean?
an amazing movie.
It's like that's how it used to be, and I think now it's just, now you can just go on YouTube and see if the show was amazing, and if it wasn't, if it sucked, you'd be like, I'm gonna pass.
I just can't imagine that. I've very much grown up like, I've got every kind of music I could ever want just at my fingertips, and all the shows. I mean, it's
of course. You can listen to MGMT or Miles Davis or Hendrix or the Beatles or Adam Ant or Duran Duran or whoever you want to listen to.
And I'm spending a couple of weeks in Canada in December, and I was looking at gig listings and I was like, shit, there's only like 4 bands I want to see in the 3 weeks I'm over there. And then I kind of thought to myself, how spoiled have I become with the amount of music that's on offer? Because I live in Manchester, and so it's a good gig. There's a good gig every other night to go to.
Yeah.
But I also think that while that has its downsides, because obviously you do become a bit accustomed to it, it's also hugely positive, because for me, I think that bands that are real quality do tend to shine through in a way that I think bands that are something a little different and that aren't mainstream but that are also incredible shine through in a way now that they may not have been able to do before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the music industry 10 years ago was just a sack of shit.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, horrible. I think music 10 years ago, just recently things have gotten a lot better.
Interesting.
Yeah, to me. Like, that would be my perception. The Loust in the Comatorium, Mars Volta was like, that was like a moment where it's like, oh, this is like some cool indie, Prague, punk, bizarre stuff in it. There were moments where it starts to, you get like a little growth happening. But now it seems like it's pretty common. Tame Impala, there's a lot of stuff going on now that's like it's pretty common to hear big guitar riffs, and it's like more what I consider like rock and roll is kind of like the heart of it all that makes it like work. And when it gets too far away from that, it doesn't work. I mean, in some way, Green Day had that pulse. It just was dressed an entirely different way.
No, I think I'd agree with you.
Yeah, they had that thing. There were elements in the 90s and the 2000s where it was still there, but it was just different and marketed different, and certainly the way that digital sales and all that stuff came up. It was, I think, just the music in general. Nobody knows how to sell music now. It's just such a you're struggling to get your song in a movie or sold in a coffee store. It's so bizarre.
Basically, bands make money off merchandise now. It's not record.
Yeah, it's impossible to make a living if you're in the middle. You're either young and at the bottom, and you just do whatever you can to get going, or we're kind of like in the middle where you're almost there, but the brand isn't big enough to get it done. It's like, so it's you keep going, and you can't do anything if you stop. You can't get anything accomplished if you stop doing it. So I've learned those lessons the hard way.
It's really good to see you kind of back around then, that Bigelf are really focusing on that. I mean, it's, obviously, I think, obviously I'm part of the generation that have come into you from this side of it rather than the other. Yeah. But I'm really, really glad that there are acts like you and acts that do something different. It just makes me... No, well, I think the show today proved that there is a demand for it. A huge demand for it, and I think it was brilliant watching people kind of moving slightly forward and just responding that little bit more at the end of each song. And I think I've said about 4 songs in today, people seemed to actually understand you, and they were getting what was going on. And I think it's brilliant when a band can do that. Are you going to be focusing on this in the future? Is this something that is Bigelf going to carry on going as strongly as it has the last year? Yeah,
I hope to. We're booking a U.S. tour. We're going to finish out these UK dates, and then we have all these Swedish dates, and I want to keep touring. The main thing is always the economy of it. Can the tour break even? Can you get something out of it?
Can you make 50 quid at the end of the tour if you're lucky?
Well, yeah,
guys, we can split it between us.
Yeah, it's not even about that, because you're doing it kind of with Bigelf now. We were on a roll in 2010. With everything that was happening there, and we were the rival sons of 2010. It was like we were the talked about band, and I didn't even actually see that at the time.
Oh,
and
really?
No, it was you're doing stuff, but it didn't seem as like, looking back now. Everybody says, oh, you guys had so much momentum. I'm like, it didn't seem like that much momentum, to be honest, from the inside, because things were still just as difficult. But now, you know, everyone's like, oh, you've been gone for 3 years. I'm going to put my fucking life back together. When, you know, band quits and there's turmoil, you know, like sometimes life takes over, and for fans it's like a joke. Hey, you're not going to take 6 years to make another record. I'm like, dude, fuck you, man. Yeah, I mean, love you guys for being fans and hanging in there, but it's you know, it's not like I'm eating fucking bonbons on the golf course.
Well, the thing is,
trying to fucking put this thing back together, and you're talking about, you know, money, people don't getting along, deaths in the family, all, you know, all kind of life takes over. Music's just, it's just music. I mean, it's.
Well, I think when people see you as a commodity that they can start, you know, and start to see you as somebody that should be just doing what they want to do, then it's really dangerous, because I think people. And I think when you've been in the industry for a while, I know that I have definitely started looking at, you know, people in bands in a totally different way. But when I was a kid, anybody that you saw playing on stage, you just assumed that they were a rock star and they were living a certain kind of lifestyle. But
you just hit the nail on the head. The beautiful misconception about Bigelf is that we're huge.
In that you're, you know, driving around think, 6 sports cars on a daily
basis.
And
it's like, rock God. It's like, yeah, they just assumed those guys are rock stars. I mean, God, it's a blessed perception. I love that people see it as this larger than life thing, but I'm like, it in some ways, you know, the perception and the music and the actual feeling, the passion is.
Yes.
But the actual infrastructure, and that's the God's honest truth, isn't. Unfortunately. So, you know, we're always working to try to connect the dots, and, you know, it's you know, one of the best quotes of my whole life that I've always kind of hung towards is, you know, somebody's asking Paul McCartney, why did the Beatles happen? What was it about it that, like, was it the songwriting? He's like, we were so lucky. We were, like, in the right place at the right time. And it's like, that's Paul McCartney saying that. And this is one of the greatest songwriters in our time. So it's, and he's like, that's a great answer, very classy answer to say, like, it's just, you know, we were so on the money with the right goods. Of course, they had all the tools waiting, but they were just the best timing. Sometimes timing, I mean, if you look at Bigelf, for instance, I look at it from the perspective of, so from my perspective, I look at Bigelf as being so behind, obviously, because everyone's like, what the hell are you guys doing? Because it's not even relatable. Like, the Crows are relatable. Bigelf was like, whoa, what is up with the Prague and the Beatles? It's like Abbey Road and Master Reality together. Like, nobody wants that. These two kind of things together that don't kind of go together. But then looking at it going forward, it's just been something very hard to connect, and just, you know, I think we were behind the times, because a lot of people, at the time, I think everybody's, you know, I always said, like, we were 30 years behind, and then like 10 or 15 years ahead of what was going to happen. So to me, we were doing this same thing, prog rock, psychedelic rock, stoner rock, whatever, like years ago. I mean, Money Machine, which is basically this sort of Prague Sabbath thing with John Lennon singing. That's what, like, people call it. That's 1992. So for me, perspective-wise, I look back and go, God, we've been doing this a while. It's totally cool. It's all right. If it takes a while, it's all right. You build it up. But to see the different trends and everything, and then finally, I mean, I'm here to tell you, 10 years ago, Prague was not cool.
Yes.
And now Prague is
and
cool.
Now it's like back in fashion.
Cool. People were like, "What's up, Rasputin?" I mean, it was when my beard was like down to here. People were like, "Rasputin," you know.
Seriously.
Oh yeah. No, people didn't. Beards were not cool. I mean, Kim Thayil from Soundgarden had a beard, but that was about it. Like, nobody had beards.
Wow.
Yeah, we were weird.
Wow.
I was like those bearded weirdos of Bigelf. I mean, now it seems so common. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the perception of it. Like, everyone has a beard now.
Yeah,
it's no fucking big deal. I mean, everyone had like a little Lars Ulrich beard or something like Mike Portnoy. I'm talking about like gigantic Taliban type beards, you know.
There's actually now like a national beard and mustache championship.
Of course there is. Of course there is. I'm just saying.
Nowadays.
But in rock and roll with the long hair, those likes, you hadn't seen that since hardcore, you know, like Skynyrd or, you know, stuff from the 70s. So it's now it's back. The you know, I think for a while we took a lot of heat because Bigelf had an aesthetic. Because I was wearing I remember I'm really into Halloween. I've been doing Halloween forever. So I think the closest thing that was happening in some other bizarre modern Marilyn Manson stratosphere was like Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
That's kind of, it's not the same, but it's from Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
But his is just more electronic and it's less retro. So, but I'm
more
in
effects
more effects. Of course, in mine's got this sort of Willy Wonka thing to it. But so I'm just saying, if you look at it from that, when I look at it from that perspective, rock and roll didn't have an aesthetic. And when people went, oh, those guys are like bell bottoms, and they were like, it basically looks like Black Sabbath in 1971. But that's really fucking cool now. Right now, it's really cool. I mean, look at Ghost. Doing the Arthur Brown thing, which is fucking great. I love Ghost. And
he's back as well, Arthur Brown.
I love them all. Brilliant. I love all the bands that I love. God willing, all those bands are successful, and it helps because, like, when Wolfmother broke out, it was successful. It was a successful sort of gate opening for more rock bands to do more things. Sometimes it takes something more commercial that's acceptable for people to understand it, and then it just helps. Yeah, just look at what like Radiohead with OK Computer. I mean, it helped. So it's we've never been that band that's going to open the gate. We've actually are this gigantic ship that just can't get in. We can't get into the gate. It's just too big. Or maybe my hat's too big. Maybe my ego's too big. No, we're trying. We're deeply trying, and whenever I'm in the UK, I'm a really happy person because this is the origin of all the influences and the stuff that I grew up that makes you dream. So it's like the Floyd, Zeppelin, all those stories. You just drive around and say, this is where this happened, this is where this happened. It's the same thing when people come to Hollywood. And they go, like this? Yeah, I live like just down the street from the Jim Morrison Love Street area, and for me that's like just nothing. It's every single day, like no big deal. Everyone's like, oh, Laurel Canyon, Frank Zappa, Crosby, Stills and Nash. Oh my God, I'm like, who cares?
Wow.
That's where I grew up.
Wow. Yeah.
Guns N' Roses, big deal.
Well, I'm the same within Britain. It's just like Beatles, that's just from down the road. Like,
I used to see Jane's Addiction when they were nobody. It was like they're fucking cult legends. All that stuff was the same. You see Motley Crue. Some high school gym and stuff. I mean, it's not even a big deal back then, but now it's your own backyard is not a thing to you. So, but for me, of course, Britain is.
Good. Well, I really like that. I really do hope that we see a lot more of Bigelf.
We're gonna come back and try to keep the momentum going again. Yeah, you're sweet. Thanks for taking the time.
I've really, really, really enjoyed the set so much. It's great, and this was the first time I'd seen you. I've heard the latest album, but I couldn't have imagined how good the live set would be. I really enjoyed it. So fangirl moments over.
You lived up at least half to it.
You know what? It was brilliant. Good. Just brilliant.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, well, it made me happy too, so
fantastic.
Thank you.
Did you see Ben Sinister or no?
They were brilliant, weren't they? I love those guys.
Good.
Yeah, because I was interviewing them, and like with all the prep I'd done, I was like, actually, these guys look like the kind of band I would like to see on stage.
They're good.
And they were,
that was like, they're one of those bands that's maybe not as heavy as stuff that I would listen to, but it's it's really interesting, and the influences are it's just good songs. That's the other thing.
They were catchy, and they really, really know how to work an audience. Yeah. That's always good.
I think that's another thing that is not necessarily inside metal and inside sort of rock is songs. Songy songs, like that's the other thing in Bigelf. Bigelf is like you're taking like Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane and putting it in Sabotage era Black Sabbath. So it's wacky, it's out there. So that's I'm writing like riffs and chords that might be a Abbey Road chord progression type of thing, but then there's these, you know what I mean?
Yes,
completely. Wicked World. There's just stuff that comes in. So that's just how I do it, and I think that's hopefully people are ready for a second coming of the elves. And,
I really hope so.
Yeah, we'll get them all back to Rivendell.
That's what we like. Finish it with the greatest reference I've had so far this interviewing weekend.
Yeah,
smooth.
Fantastic.
But yeah, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, and now I'm sure that we'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Yeah, see you again.